Hello, this is the course of Information System Development, and this chapter will be about the Django again, and we are going to learn about XML and JSON. So this section will be separated into three parts. Okay? So you will learn about the concept of XML and JSON, and also you will learn how to apply the XML and JSON into the Django, and we are going to use the Django REST framework. And at the end, we are going to learn how to apply the Ajax. What is Ajax and what is feeder? Okay. So I can say in brief that in this section, you will learn about the XML and JSON and what is XML and JSON and the current trend of the XML and JSON. And also you will learn how the difference between XML and JSON. And we are going to write a simple XML and JSON with write function and read function. For the REST framework, you will learn about the API, and we are going to learn about the Django REST framework or DRF. And we are going to know about the advantage of DRF and the examples. And in the last part, we are going to learn about the Ajax. Ajax stands for the asynchronous JavaScript and XML. So you already learned about the JavaScript, and in this section, we will learn about the XML. And after you know about the XML, we are going to relate, we are going to synchronize between the JavaScript and XML. And there are some libraries that we can use like feed parser, and yes, you're going to understand how to do the external JSON and Ajax, and also how to run the DRF, which is the Django REST framework, and Ajax. So in this section, we are going to learn about XML and JSON, and I want to focus on this uh, keyword about database. So you already know that when we create a web system, okay, when we make the web application, you need to build your database. Okay. So in the database, frequently fails to operate synchronously when there is a data exchange in the web. It means when you have the data in the web, you need to connect to the backend, and then you need to connect to the front end. Okay, so if you connect to the back end and then you connect to the front end again, okay, sometimes there will be some issues with the connection because the back end will be in the server and the front end will be in the client side. So this kind of mechanism will not be good when you need the data in short. So the HTML is only to show the document. So it is only to show. So there is no there is no tag related to data. It means when you are dealing with your data, yeah, if you still remember when you use Django, you need to use the curly bracket. So if you use the double curly bracket, then you can access the data from the backend. And based on this one, we have the database in the backend. And then the HTML, there is no data. So there is a need to use a software and hardware independent tool. So if you want to connect to this web and transport the data and store the data, it means you need to have one additional tool. That's the reason people build the XML. XML stands for the Extensible Markup Language. So this is a kind of language similar with the HTML, but in HTML it is the hypertext. So you need to use tag. Okay, so you need to use tag in order to fit with the component in the hypertext. But the XML is extensible, and then yeah, we are still using the markup. Okay, and this markup language, yeah, we will see later what is the meaning by the markup. And later on, we also need to know about the development of the JavaScript. So the JavaScript is the programming language which is from the web browser, and then the development of the JavaScript. Actually, this JavaScript is intended for the client side, and at the end, okay, you can see that the JavaScript is dealing with the object. So if you are dealing with the object-oriented programming and you want to use the JavaScript, so there is one kind of object notation, and we call it the JSON. So yeah, we call it J is it stands for the JavaScript. Son, so this means the JavaScript object notation. So when we are dealing with the XML, okay, what is XML? The XML is a data format, and we call the XML is the extensible markup language. It is a way to structure the data. So yeah, as we know that the XML is a data format. So there are some specification on this XML. So for example, we can go to this site, and XML also provide the schema. Okay. So there's a standard about the schema. So you can go to this one. So if you want to check actually, yeah, let's see if you want to check this XML site. So this is the, yep, this is the XML, the first, I think this, yeah, this is the 5th edition. It was built on 2008, and it seems there is no much changes on the format of this XML. Okay, and you can see there are many components that you can learn in this XML documentation. And also when you are dealing with this schema, okay, so this schema actually is also a kind of standard for building the data. You know, if you're dealing with the database, you will have the data schema. Okay? So the data schema means the database schema means the ERD. You know, the entity relationship diagram. So that's the schema. Okay? And if you're trying to make your data, then you need to have the schema. So the schema here, XML have the way to define the schema. So this is the documentation about the schema, and we call this is the XSD, XML schema definitions. So if you have interest on the XML, so you can refer to this documentation. So I will just to explain the very basic idea about the XML, yeah, because I think we have not many times to deal with all the things in the web development. So if you want to check the details, you can just go to those two websites. JSON is also a kind of data format. So the same with the XML. In JSON is basically a JavaScript object notation. So most of the contents are similar with the JavaScript, and this JSON is a way of structuring the data. Okay, so the same with the XML. JSON has the specification, so you can take a look. Okay, I will not open this one. You can take a look later. And then the JSON, they have the schema as well. The same with the uh, XML. Okay, so JSON have the schema. We have the schema core, and they have the schema validation. So it means that when you create your JSON, you need to validate whether the schema is correct or not. So I would like to discuss a little bit. So maybe the data is a little bit old, but it's still representative to show that how the developers, how the people utilize the JSON and XML at a few years ago. Okay? So it is updated until 2019. Okay? And if you want to take a look, I guess the graph will not be so big different. So you can see the blue color is the JSON, okay? And then the orange color is the XML. So this is the JSON, and the orange color is the XML, and then the green color is CSV. So if you are familiar with the machine learning stuff, okay, so you will have your data in the CSV format, or there is another kind of format which is SOAP. So SOAP is kind of data format as well, but I will not discuss about SOAP because it's a little bit complex. And you can see based on the trend, SOAP is not that popular. So I will just focus on the JSON and XML. Unfortunately, people now try to uh, use JSON more than XML. Okay? If you ask me why there is a decrement here, okay? Yeah, so there are many alternatives nowadays. You can use like the cloud, okay? So, and you can use some kind of the platform for this kind of data, not using the JSON format, not using the XML format, but they have like the text-based format or tabulation-based format. So there are many variants about this data. So people claim that it's good, but yeah, it depends on the application. So for this course, I will just focus on the XML and JSON. So some application that you may take a look is news. Okay? So news feed, for example, this ESPN. Okay, so if you go to the so if you are going to check this ESPN, so this ESPN, it is a sport news in USA, and they provide this kind of news feed. Okay, we call it, this is a news feed. News feed means every time they have a new news, they will put it into one kind of data, and people can access this data for free. Okay. In one cases, they mention it is a kind of feed. Okay, so we call this is RSS feed. Okay. Sometimes we call it just feed. Okay, or maybe people, the developer will call it this as API, okay, application programming interface. When you want to have the data of some websites, then you need to access the API. Okay. So this, you can see here now the ESPN provide the RSS. Okay. So RSS is the format that you can use, okay, for your development. Like this one, it is the XML file. You can see this is the XML file, does not appear to have any style information associated with it. So this is the title. So this is the top news, the latest top news from ESPN. They are updating every time. So okay, this is Tuesday for May. Okay. Yeah, of course, the American time is not the same with this one. So using this kind of feed, you will notice that this is kind of data, but it's different format. Okay. Now, how can we adopt this kind of format into our web? So there are many kind of headlines, and you can check. Okay, NFL, NBA, etc. So JSON can be used. So in the case of XML, yeah, you know that ESPN used the XML, but how if we want to use the JSON? So JSON also is popular, okay, especially when you are going to show data visualization in a particular format. Let's say this one, there is one application web application called Mapbox. So the Mapbox, they are going to is a kind of data visualization tool. Okay. And this guy actually they try to build some kind of application to know how many people are now accessing Twitter, and then how many people are tweeting, and then what are the devices. Okay. So this is the code that the person developed, and then after they develop this application, you can see in the map box. So you can see in the map box that this is a kind of yes, this is the visualization. So you can take a look on the green, red, purple, and this is light purple. Okay? And you can check this one if it is in the red color. Okay? Yeah, the red color represent the iPhone. It means there are many iPhone users are accessing the Twitter. So this is the current state. Yeah. And if you want to check, like, yeah, you can see the green color is user who use Android, and then purple is the person who use BlackBerry, and so on. Okay? And if you take a look this one, maybe there are not so many people who use the BlackBerry. BlackBerry is not one of the technology that has had been popular in the past, but not recent days. So yeah, there are so little about the BlackBerry in the world. So you can see that yeah, the scatter, the people who use the Twitter are mostly use the iPhone. Okay. Yeah, this kind of application basically they use JSON. And how can they use JSON? Yeah, it's a little bit complex because it consists a lot of data. So we will learn the basic idea about the XML and JSON. So for example, this one, um, I have the data about the book. Okay? You know, book. So in a book, you will see the title, authors, date of publication, and publisher. So those are the attributes, just for example. Now I have an XML here. This is an XML. So the XML is the same with the database. So we already know that XML is a kind of data format. Let's suppose we have this table. Okay, you already know about the table. So this is the column, and the attribute is title, and this is another column, and the attribute is author one. This is author two, and date, and publisher. So we can create the format for the table like this one. And now how can we create the XML? So here is the case. So book, okay, you use the tag. The tag idea is the same with the HTML, but you can see here the data is more flexible. Yeah, the tag is more flexible. If you are using the HTML, the tag should be you need to use the tag according to the defined tag in HTML. So you need to use HTML. Okay. So you need to use head. You need to use body. In order to make a table, you need to use table. Okay. So that's the complicated of HTML, and yeah, at least you need to memorize the tag, that the possible tag for the HTML. In the XML, the tag is flexible. You can define by yourself. So for example, now I want to have book, then you can define book. Or maybe you want to have the data about car, then you can make car. Okay? If you have a data about house, then you can put this one house. So it's very flexible to write the tag. And you can see if it is a book, and you can put one indentation, to represent that, okay, the first attribute is title and next will be authors. And okay, we have two authors, so we need to define the author one, which is the Grun, and then the other author is Cyril Jacobs. And you can take a look for every attributes, it will be started with the triangle bracket and then ended with the triangle bracket plus the slash. Okay, so we have multiple authors. So the first author is the Grun, the second author is Jacobs, and then we close. Okay, so every starting tag, okay, every starting tag or the beginning of the tag should have the ending tag. Okay, that's also the same with the HTML. So we have next about date. Maybe I can just say what year, but okay, let's say it's about date, and then the publisher. So those things are the same with the table format. Now, if you take a look on the JSON, it is a little bit different, but okay, the structure is the same. The structure, what does it mean by the structure? You have attribute title, you have author one, author two, you have date, and publisher is the same, but it is in the different style. Let's say this one is book. Okay, if you're familiar with the kind of map or dictionary, okay, in the Python you will learn about the dictionary, or in Java you will learn about map. Okay, so the dictionary is usually contain of k, this is the key, and then v, which is the value. Okay, the same with the map. In Java you will have k and then you will have v. K is the key and v is the value. So in this case we want to have the key or k. What is the key? Okay, the key is book. Okay, and then after I know one book, I have one instance. So this is one instance, and in this one instance I would like to have the attribute title, I would like to have the attribute authors, and then I would like to have the attribute date, and then I want to have the attribute publisher, and those are the data. So after the colon, they are the data. Every data has a single value except authors. Okay, so authors we have two, so we create this. Yeah, so the idea is actually the same with the Python. However, it is in the JavaScript format, and it looks like the same. Yeah. Now, if you want to compare between XML and JSON, what is the difference? If you take a look on the side by side, they are the same. We have the book, okay, and then we have the title, okay, and then we have the date, and then we have the publisher. So basically, they are the same. However, we have some differences, and the differences is in the outer section. It is in the outer attributes. In the outers, we have multiple outers. Okay, here in XML, you need to define one by one. Outer, the and then put the slash outer. And then another outer is outer, Cyril Jacobs, and then slash outer. In JSON, it's much more simple. You just use list to indicate the first author and the second author, and we can access the index, for example. Okay, now let's try. For this example, I will use again the separate project. Okay, I'm not going to use the big project first, because I guess you need to understand the concept about the REST API and etc. So let's make a new Django project. So let's make a new project, and yeah, just let's make the basic REST. Okay, and then okay, in my case I need to make this one. Okay, let's just use this window. Now what we need to do next is create a folder named testing data. So the testing data, it can be anything, it can be anywhere. Let me just make this one. Let's make a new folder, or we can say this is the directory. Okay, and then what is the name of the directory? The name is testing data. Okay, yeah, please follow this one because uh, I will use the information like the test data throughout the PowerPoint. And then we are going to write the code for this for.py. So we are going to make the PyDev module, and we are going to make write XML, reading XML, writing JSON, and reading JSON. Okay, so let's make this one. So we have this as new, and we want to execute the Python file. So this one is writing XML, and then we have let's say reading XML, and then what we have next is the reading JSON and writing JSON. So I will make a new Python file, writing JSON, and then reading JSON. Oops, not Jupyter Notebook. Okay, it's too far. So we need to have the reading JSON. Okay. So there are 4 files, and all files are the Python file. Now let's do one by one. Okay. In the writing XML.python, so you can just copy and paste. Okay, copy here, and then put the code in the writing XML.py. Writing XML.py. Okay. So I will explain later. Okay. And if you have the writing XML, okay, oh, okay, I guess after you have the code, you need to execute this one. Okay, so it is in the writing XML, and then you can just execute. So run this writing XML. Okay. Yeah, basically when you run this Python, it will execute the interpreter, which is the Python that you define in the first time when you create the project. And when you see this one, you will see one new data, which is book data XML. And if you take a look, maybe it is not that good in the format. Okay, so you can just control A here, and then I guess last time I have this file. Okay, wait a moment. Okay, it seems I have difficulties to put this into the correct format, but yeah, if you want to see manually, maybe this one is something like this one. So the author is the same here. I have the authors, and then I have this one. Uh, yeah, this is just an example. Okay, so you can see if you put down the data, the text, so you will get automatically aligned with the other attribute. Okay. So we have the first data is Python, and the second data is information system. Okay. So if you want to do one by one, yeah, you can do one by one. Actually, there's no way. Hmm. Yeah, I guess there's like this. Okay. Yes. So you need to use the, okay, this is the collapse. So once you finish with this one, of course it will be collapsed into the into one file. Okay, but okay, if you want to take a look more, I guess you can deal with this one by one. Let me check how can we reformat this one easily. Okay, so if you just enter one by one, it's tedious, it's time consuming. Okay, so anyway, you will see that this is book, title, authors, and then there are two authors here, John and Bob. Okay, you have the date, which is 2013, and the publisher is Springer. Okay, and in some cases, the people would like to use the ending. So the ending of this one means if I have book, then book is the representative for that particular instance. So every book will have the title. Okay? So every book will have the title and the authors and then date and publisher. And then you can see here the title, authors, date, publisher. So it means they are the same. Okay. So if they are the same, then yeah, you can just close with the one he defined here. For example, if it is this book, then you can just close. So for example, here you want to close, and then you can open again with a new book. Okay, so that's also one possibility. Okay, anyway, I will just use this one. Oh, okay, yeah, actually you have the reformat code. I'm not sure if you have, yeah, there is no reformat code here. Maybe here. Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, I think you need to access this one and then you need to do the reformat code. Okay, now it works and it will give you an easy way to read the file. Okay, so this file is the same with this one. So every section will represent the book. Okay, so this is the first book about Python, and then this is the second book is about the information system, and then the third book which is related to the database. And for every books, it is a collection of books with S. And now, how about if you want to read the XML? Okay, so you can check this code. So I will explain to you soon. So we are going to read XML. Okay, so in order to read the XML, yeah, we use this one, and then let's see if I run this code. Now you can see there are books. All item in data, the title is Python, author John and Bob, and date is 2013. And the publisher is Springer. The other paper is the other book. Title is Information System, and the author name is Andrew and Martin, and okay, and so on. Okay, so using this reading and writing, so let's take a look. When you create an XML, you need to start from root. So once you have the root, okay, so the root, what is the root? Books. When we have the root books, we want to create one element, or we want to create the instance. Yeah, so I want to have book in every of the book. So I will have the data. What is this data? So the data contains of title, and then we have date, we have publisher, and this is the code to represent multiple authors. It means there are several authors, not only one. In order to fit with these multiple authors, we need to use the sub element, and this sub element will be represented in the authors. Okay. So you can see here, authors is the sub element of the book. Okay, And after you finish with every attribute in that data one, you can go to the authors, author. So in this case, the authors is the superclass, and then the author without s is the subclass. Here we have two person name, John and Bob. The same with the data too. Yeah, you will need to define the title and the date and the publisher, and then for these authors, there should be another line to represent this author. So the same with the data tree. Okay, we define the title, we define the date, we have defined the publisher. Okay, and then yeah, at the end, we want to what we call as the building tree. Okay, so I guess I will not explain this one. Now in this part, you need to put all the tree. Okay, what is the tree? So you are building this tree. Okay? You are building this tree, and after you know all those elements, okay, we are going to use et. Okay, so et is the what is the meaning of et? Okay, there is no such meaning. We element tree. Okay, so we want to use this element tree. So in the data structure, we have the tree. So it represents very uh, efficient in the running performance. So we are going to use this element tree, and then the element tree is used to build the tree from the root. Okay, so it means from the books with S, and then yeah, you will go to next like book, and then you will have authors and so on. And then once you already built those things, yeah, we are making an XML file, and this XML file based on the tree that has been generated. Okay, JSON. What is JSON? Okay. In JSON, you already know that we need to have the at least one of the attribute name. Okay, and then after you have one, you will need to append. Okay, so once you have one instance or one book, you can define the title is Python and the authors is John and Bob, and it has been written in 2012, and the publisher is Springer. So you can take a look. Okay, so you can just copy and paste this one. Then let's go to PyCharm, and then reading. Oh, sorry, reading is writing JSON. Okay, so we have writing JSON, and then we have this is the first data, and then this is the second data, and then this is the third data. Okay, now using those data, uh, I would like to create the JSON. Okay, so after you create the JSON, okay, let's just run this on writing JSON. So you can run, and ta-da, you can get the JSON. Okay, so this JSON, if you open this one, okay, this is still in the one line. Okay, so it will screw up your code. Then the same with the XML, just go here and then right click. Okay, don't forget to right click, not left click. But after you do the right click, you can just remove the code. Just click OK, because we actually just want to get the format. Now you will see here is almost similar to XML. It starts with book, and then for every of these data, title, authors. Okay, so we already discussed in the previous pages. Okay, so those are the data in the JSON format. And if it is XML, we use .xml. If it is JSON, we use the .json. Okay, so when we have this book and then title, authors, one of the concern here is how to write in the book data .json. Okay, how can we write this one? you will see here in the writing JSON, we use the data. So if you still remember, okay, in Python, we have this to represent the set, and then we have this to represent the array or the list. Okay. And if you take a look on this one, we have book, which is blank, and after we have some data, we will append. So what are the append comments? It means we want to make more data. So this is the first data, and then append, we want to create another data, and then we create another data. Then let's assume that we finish with the three data. So we can just use open, okay, with open book data.json. So if it is not available, yeah, then you can choose another kind of option. For example, this one W. W means write. So if you choose R, means you only read the data. You cannot update. You cannot rewrite the data. Okay. So if you have the W, then you have the right to modify the format of the JSON. So here I just make the W, and then yeah, we have this one. Yeah, I guess it's not that important because it is just to remove some of the memory issue. Okay. Now, maybe you can copy and paste this one to the reading JSON.py. So we have the reading JSON.py. Okay, now let's see. We want to, okay, well, now as you might know, the data is about the book. We have the title, we have the authors, and then we have the date, and we have the publisher. And the reading JSON can capture the format. Okay, so this is the example book data.json that has been generated before. And then we are loading. Okay, so we are retrieving the data into our, for example, laptop or PC, and then we want to get the JSON file. Okay, so the JSON file, yeah, it is the this one. This is the alias name. Okay, and then we will do the loop. So for every book, okay, as I mentioned to you, we have like books, okay, and the book contain at least four attributes: title, authors, date, and publisher. Okay. So this kind of reading JSON will work if you already have data. For example, if I run this, you will see this data. It means, yeah, everything is fine. Okay. So what is the difference? Okay? When we say about XML, when we say about JSON, what is your feeling? Okay. Yeah, it mentioned that XML is a language that you use to create other language. And for example, if you see in the previous, we use the XML to create book language, and it consists of book, title, author, and so on. So it can create another language, okay, for this one. But if you use JSON, it is also a language that you can use to create other languages. For example, in the previous slide, we saw how to use JSON to create book language. Okay, so the idea of JSON is like a tree, similar to the XML, but there is no ending statement in JSON. And if you have the tree, okay, if you have the tree like this one, then you may know that, okay, it's easy. One book consists of four attributes. Okay, it consists of title, author, date, and publisher. And then in this attribute, we have the data. Passing authors, we have the data. Author is the current, we have another author, Carol Jacobs, and then we have the date, and then we have the publisher. So using this tree, yeah, you can easily create the schema actually. Okay, but I will not discuss how to make the schema. JSON is kind of the data format as well, as you might know. If you are dealing with the XML, the outers is separated. Okay? Because the format in XML, you need to use the tag. Okay? So the tag is only one data. Okay? But in the JSON, you can have multiple data here. For example, there are two outers, okay? But those two outers are not separated. If you are using XML, then you need to separate two outers. But if you use the JSON, there is no need to split the outers because we can use lists. Okay, so this is the list. So the other data is just the same with the XML data. So we use tree. Okay, so tree is the popular, okay, well studied by computer scientists and mathematicians because it is a very good algorithm for processing and especially for traversing. So if you have a lot of data and you want to reduce the complexity, then using the tree will be also good. Okay? Both XML and JSON are able to leverage this, and then tree can be used for the data as well as the schema. So the key point here is here. So we have the tree. The tree in this case is the schema. Okay, but how can we extract for additional data? So for example, in the previous one here, we have the tree. Maybe until the part, okay, until this part, yeah, you will see that okay, it is yeah, it is the data, the schema. Okay, but if you want to include the data, it means you will go until all thing here. So this is the data, and then this is the schema. Okay, so schema represent the structure of the data. Yes, and XML schema show the structure of the data in the XML format, and the JSON schema display the structure of the data in the JSON format. Now, you need to understand that the schema is not the schema that you learn in the database section, but this schema is for the XML. Okay, if you take a look on this slide, we have the element, okay? We have the element and then complex type. So this is the beginning, and this is the ending. Okay? So we have the sequence, and then first is the element name is the title, and then it is in the format of string element, and then we have authors. Okay, complex authors. So this complex author means you this complex type. Okay, this complex type is something related with the multiple values. Okay, you know that the authors they have two. So yeah, you can define here with the complex type. So if you are using just a single date like this one, yeah, you can specify also what is the date information. In this case, I would like to use only year. Then you can just define G year. If you want to have this kind of element, for example, publisher, so the minimum occurs is 0. Oh, you can see here, maximum occurs is 5. Okay. So this maximum occurs is related with the number actually. Okay. So in this case, maximum equals to 5 is the book. If you want to publish a book, there will be no 5 authors. Okay. So more than 5 is not allowed, but 5 is still fine. The same with this publisher. So the minimum occurs equals to 0. It means nothing happened. Okay. If you do not know the publisher, then yeah, you can just leave it blank. And there will be some enumeration. For example, if you publish in a string, if you publish in the MIT press, if you are published in the Harvard press, so there will be different kind of enumeration. Yeah. Yeah, if in the previous code you will see the XML, and now you will see the JSON schema. Okay, so the schema is somehow um, is not that difficult to understand. So for example, we have book. So I will not discuss the upper side. So the upper side is about the schema in the JSON itself. You can see the drop here, and then the type is an object. So it means every instance will be an object. And then the properties start with book. Okay, so that's I think this is one of the issue later. If you want to do this kind of code, it will be tough because the first schema is like definition, okay, and your data starts from the book. So this is the data about the object, and then the properties we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then yeah, after you finish with every data here, like for example, the author at this one and maximum 5, and the type is string, and then date it will use only the year, and then the publisher we have Springer, MIT Press, and Harvard Press, and then it will use the enumeration. Yeah. At the end, yeah, we have the required. Yeah, so the required, yes, there are 3 data, and then additional properties are false. So this kind of statement does not available in the XML. And at the end, you will require the book, and then additional properties also set as false. Okay, maybe I will stop here first. I will continue again with another video. Okay, so I will continue the material with another video. Okay, thank you very much for listening, and let's see again in the next video.